Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Peconic Estuary Partnerships Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. We host these meetings quarterly, so this is the second meeting of 2020. And we have these meetings to talk about topics related to protecting and restoring the Peconic Estuary. And for our partners, we hope it's a platform for us to collaborate on projects. And for citizens, we hope it's a platform for people to engage with us and get involved in citizen science programs, and also just a platform to ask questions about environmental topics. So this meeting today is the Long Island Diamondback Terrapin Monitoring Workshop, and it's co-hosted with CAC Environmental Association and Dr. Russell Burke of the Jamaica Bay Terrapin Project. My name is Lauren Shear. I manage the education and outreach for the Peconic Estuary Partnership. And for today's goal, we hope for our partners on the call that we're providing you with the knowledge and the resources necessary so that you can go out and host your own training workshops and really expand this terrapin monitoring effort across Long Island. And for the citizens on the call today, we hope that you really learn everything you need to know about how to identify terrapins, what they look like, how to identify evidence of their activity on certain shorelines, so that you can be able to record your sightings. And at the end of this meeting, we're going to unveil CAC's Diamondback Terrapin Watch, which is the online survey that we hope all of our Long Island citizen scientists and partners utilize to record their sightings of terrapins, so we can have this massive database that all groups can benefit from. So before we get into the meeting, I do want to go over the Zoom platform. You'll notice that you entered the meeting on mute. We do expect, we had over 100 registrations for this meeting today, which is fantastic. But just to minimize distractions, we have everyone on mute. And we do ask also at this time, if you haven't already, just to turn off your video sharing. That'll also just help to minimize distractions as our speakers are presenting today. However, we really want to encourage questions and feedback. So please don't hesitate to use the chat box. You can find the chat box on your Zoom platform. It's on the bottom toolbar, where you could click the chat box, and then a window will pop up. You can insert your question or your comment anytime during this meeting. If a guest speaker is speaking at the time, one of the other hosts will answer your question. If it's specific to the speaker, our host will interject that speaker or save that question for the end. Around 3:30, 3:45, we intend to keep that open for a question and answer portion of the meeting. So let's say we didn't cover something that you had a question on, or something was said that you just want some clarification, or you just want to give feedback at that time, the last half an hour or so. We encourage you again to use that chat box and engage with us, and all hosts will then be able to address the comments and questions at that time. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to introduce John Turner, who is the Senior Conservation Policy Advocate of CAC Environmental Association. He's going to talk about the biology of terrapins, the threats that they endure, and how you can get involved.
Okay, great. I'm hoping you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. I'm just going to, here we go.
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to also extend a welcome to everybody that's participating in this workshop. I think it's an exciting workshop, and I think that through all our collective efforts moving forward bodes well for terrapin conservation on Long Island. Just give you a 2-second background about CAC Environmental Association. It's a not-for-profit wildlife conservation organization that is based at the Scully Mansion down in Islip, and we work on a variety of wildlife-related issues, water quality issues, and we kind of centered around this approach that we call working groups, where we've established the different working groups relating to species. The one you may know most about, the work that we've done, has to do with diagenous fish, trying to restore alewives. So we get these working groups that involve a lot of different member organizations and interested individuals, and come together and collaborate and collectively try to advance strategies to protect the species that's the subject of these working groups. So we have the diadrous fish working group. We've established a horseshoe crab working group. And of course, we have a Diamondback Terrapin working group. And I'd like to extend an invitation to you, if you're interested in participating in that working group, which meets once or twice a year, to please shoot me an email at CTalk. You'll see my contact information. And we'd love for you to participate in that effort. So Lauren, if we could start with the next slide. If that would be possible. Okay, great. Well, we're going to talk about the turtle with the clown lips. And I wish I came up with that characterization, but that was a note that I saw in Barbara Brennisill's book called Diamonds in the Marsh, which I'll talk about at the very end of this presentation. But I think you can just see from these slides just what a beautiful animal terrapins are. And I never get tired of looking at them and just realizing what stunning kind of iconic animals they are. One of the interesting aspects, and I think Dr. Burke will talk more about this, who has conducted so much research regarding these animals, is how each one really is individually patterned with different dots and scrolls and dashes on their body. We get the name, of course, due to the diamond-shaped scutes on the top shell. But they really are pretty individualistic, which can be helpful with researchers. And of course, they get the name clown lips because their mouths have both the top and bottom mandibles that are very, very powerful and used for crushing hard-bodied prey items that we'll see in just a little while. Next slide, Lauren, please. You hit it again. There we go. And so there are a lot of people that are really quite enthusiastic about their interest in terrapins. And I'm not sure if this is Lauren that did this or it's Ariel, but I think it's one of the two that are participating that went the extra mile to do this to their lips. Okay, next one, please. So you can see again just what a stunningly beautiful turtle it is. Certainly one of the most beautiful reptiles that we have in North America. And again, they get their name because of the diamond-shaped scutes on the carapace. And as I mentioned, they're really individually patterned. And so you really can tell the individuals apart. And talking with some researchers, they really say they can identify sometimes young based on, just a genetic transfer of how the young have patterns that are similar to the adults. So next slide, please. The Diamondback Terrapin really is a coast-hugging reptile. You can see from this slide, it is found along the Atlantic coast from pretty much Cape Cod down to southern Florida, and then wraps around the Gulf Coast over to pretty much close to where the Rio Grande empties into the Gulf by the Mexico United States national line. Right now, there are 7 subspecies of terrapins that are recognized. Recent evidence has called that into question, but most people still ascribe to the belief that there's 7. We have the nominate species we would call Malaclemys terrapin, or the northern terrapin, which is the one you can see on the right there. That the red denotes the range along the coast, which captures, of course, Long Island. Next slide, please. In New York, then, not surprisingly, the terrapins are restricted to the coastal area, which means overwhelmingly the Long Island coast and New York City, and then Westchester a little bit, and then going up the Hudson to a small extent. And that is work that was done by the New York State DEC. There was a yeoman's effort back in the 90s to conduct a statewide New York State amphibian and reptile atlas. That information is available online if you would like to learn more about the distribution of other native reptiles and amphibians, or herps as we call them, that exist both on Long Island, New York. That information is available. But you can see the quadrangles that are in yellow are ones that in which terrapins were found. Next slide, please. You say this terrapin is a lover of brackish water. It is not typically found in fresh water, and it's not found in really salty water or out in the ocean. It is found in the creeks of mouths, streams, rivers, in salt marshes, in shallow coastal embayments like Stony Brook Harbor and Mount Sinai Harbor and Oyster Bay Harbor, and along the South Shore again, in the Great South Bay and some of the bays, of course, that fringe Peconic Bay, including places like Northwest Harbor and Acaponic Harbor. So it is a turtle of kind of protected waters, and that's pretty much where it occurs. Next slide, Lauren, please. Just very quickly, this I pulled off the Wetland Institute, which is a great organization in New Jersey that's done a lot of work towards advancing terrapin conservation. And you can just learn about some interesting physiological facts about terrapins. And the top one there, you can see about the special glands they have, tear glands. Well, not surprisingly, terrapins spend a lot of time in water that can get pretty salty. Again, not quite as saline as ocean water, but certainly much more saline or salty than fresh water. And so they ingest the salt, and they have to have a means or a way to get rid of it. And so they've got this lacrimal gland that's up behind the eye that exudes the salt to help get rid of it. They also have, as the second slide indicates, and then the second paragraph and the second paragraph in the bottom talks about how they really do have very strong jaws. And you'll see just how valuable and important those strong jaws are in just a minute when we look at some of their items in their diet. Next slide, please. I'm not going to really go into detail because I know Dr. Burke is going to speak more about this, but to point out that, and it's really important because most people's experience with terrapins, where they come across terrapins, are females that are coming ashore just starting this time of year in about the end of the first week in June through mid-June, right through much of the summer, when the females will come ashore to excavate their flask-shaped nesting cavities and then lay their eggs. And again, I'm not going to talk more about it, to simply say that one of the fascinating aspects of terrapins is that many of those nests will stay like that if they're laid, particularly later in the season, over the winter. They will not come up in the fall in October, November, and of course run the risk of freezing to death. They will bide their time in the nest and come out this time of year. And in fact, we've been hearing reports of people that have been finding baby terrapins. That example of that. Next slide, please. This is a slide that Lauren's just going to show. It's a video that will just show a female that's come ashore to lay her eggs, and you can see just a little bit about excavating the cavity, as well as some egg laying, perhaps, and then covering up the nest once she's done. You can see how they use their web-like feet, really expand their feet, and able to really scoop up the moist sand pretty readily to be able to excavate the nest in a fairly timely fashion. Maybe, Lauren, if you can go a little bit further, there you go. So maybe you can see egg laying. We're not going to show the whole video simply to save time, but and it is fascinating. Again, I think Dr. Burke will talk more about this, but the decision making that goes into where the nest is going to be laid, females will walk around and sniff and the soil and start and stop, excavating, and then finally, for reasons that I must say are not clear to me, why she decides that's going to be the spot. But then she will lay her eggs. As you can just see, an egg just came out there. The eggs are somewhat soft-shelled. They're not hard and brittle, which makes sense because they are dropping several inches. And if they were hard and brittle, obviously they would very more likely break. Let me just go to the end, maybe, Lauren, if you could show the, again, maybe the covering up. So there she's done. She's finished the clutch. They do multi-clutch, but you see how she, again, just how dexterous, how well she can move her back legs and pull in the sand to be able to eliminate really any sense about the depression. Okay. Okay, next slide, Lauren. Thank you. That was great. So one of the problems is that terrapins, again, coming ashore this time of year, could get them into harm's way. They can get into harm's way by, of course, crossing roads, and unfortunately, some become roadkill. We'll talk about that in a second. But again, Dr. Burke may talk about this a little bit in places near Jamaica Bay. They can really get into trouble because the terrapins come out onto runways where they pose a risk to airplanes landing, as well as, of course, to the terrapins themselves. And you can see Dr. Burke in the lower right-hand corner with a caliper that's measuring a, looks like a really large female terrapin. Next slide, please. One of the interesting aspects about terrapins is I believe they are the most sexually dimorphic based on size of any North American turtle. And you can just see that in 3 of these 4 slides, just how remarkably different they are. The males are smaller, females are much larger. Females can get to be upwards of 2 to 2.5, 2 3/4 pounds, while the males will often be less than a pound. And if you measure her plastron length, she can be 6, 7 inches, while the males are much smaller than that. And that has implications for one of the real concerns, and that has to do with terrapins going into crab pots, which we'll talk about in just a couple of minutes. You can, by the way, identify often male terrapins from females, and you can say this is largely true for turtles, where the males have a much longer tail that they use to help muscles in the tail to help hold on to the female when he's mating with her. Next slide, please. Okay. So their diet, as I mentioned, it consists of hard-bodied organisms. Those of you that have spent time along the coast and in marshes or on mud flats, sand flats, then you're certainly familiar with the different snails that we have here. And so if you've ever picked one up, can you just imagine crushing that in your teeth? And that's what terrapins do routinely. They are not passive predators. They will pursue their food. And so they will go after a fiddler crab or a blue crab that will come by. They will pursue carrion if they can. If they come across a dead fish, they will certainly use that to their advantage. And certainly different type of mollusks they'll feed upon, showing soft shell clams here, but they're also known to feed on mussels as well. Next slide, please. Not only do we talk about what the terrapins eat, but to make the point to you that, in fact, at one time, terrapins were widely eaten by humans. And in fact, that was a major cause for their significant decline, pretty much up and down the entire Atlantic coast, particularly from Cape Cod down to Chesapeake. And there was some fear that they may become extirpated because of how badly they were hammered. You can see in this slide just a number of 58,000 females that were harvested in 1 year in Maryland. And there's simply no way that the population could sustain that kind of take. What appeared to be the saving grace was really a prohibition that made illegal the sale and use of sherry, which is a key ingredient in making terrapin stew or soup. And they have rebounded since then. Next slide, please. They are cultural icons. And I don't know if we have anybody that's participating in today's webinar that has been to the University of Maryland or attended that or knows somebody that has, but you know that they have Keep Calm and Fear the Turtle and their low icon with the Terps. I did find it worthwhile to put one person that's, of course, complying with the COVID restrictions well by putting on a Terp mask. Next slide, please. And of course, those Grateful Dead fans out there are familiar with one of their more well-known albums, Terrapin Station. Next slide. So I'd like to spend just a couple of minutes on the threats and solutions that terrapins face to kind of give you a full perspective of the strategies that we have started to develop and will continue to develop to try to enhance terrapin populations on Long Island. Next slide, please, Lauren. So one of the first things that was done, and a number of individuals participated in this effort, again, Dr. Burke played a key role, and that is realizing just several years ago that terrapins could still be harvested for human food. And the belief that the terrapin populations have declined so much that the very unlikely that terrapin populations could sustain a legal harvest. We don't really have a clear sense of their numbers in the state. And quite frankly, in the year 2017 or 2020, the food choices that we have are so varied and so abundant that there's really no need to harvest terrapins. So there was a concerted effort to try and legally eliminate the harvest through this rulemaking process, and that was complete in 2017. So now terrapins are protected, and it is illegal to harvest terrapins for food. Next slide, please. Another issue of great concern that has adversely affected terrapins is drowning in commercial or non-collapsible crab pots. We know that it is a common occurrence in New York waters. It is much more common further south. We know that thousands to perhaps tens of thousands of terrapins drown in the states of Virginia right down through to Georgia each year, where they still have abundant populations, because these terrapins, of course, go into these pots to get the bait or to go after the crabs that have gone in after the bait, and they cannot find their way out, and they ultimately drown. And one of the low-tech, relatively cheap solutions that CTOC has been advocating and DEC is supportive and the Nature Conservancy has been great on is a requirement that these crab pods have their vents be equipped with a TED, which is an acronym for a terrapin excluder device that's put on the vent. If they're these plastic ones, they're typical put on with zip ties. The Nature Conservancy has made some metal ones that are put on by hog rings. They're 1 3/4 inches high by 4 3/4 inches wide, and that seems to be the sweet spot for still allowing crab harvest to be unaffected, but maximizes the number of terrapins that can't get in. And so it appears from research and trials that have been done in places that terrapin mortality, drowning mortality, can be reduced by about 3/4 by the use of these TEDs. So a number of us advocated that this should be a regulation, that these crab pots in New York coastal waters should be required to be equipped with TEDs, and that in fact is the case. Next slide, please. So a little bit hard to see at this scale, but those kind of olive colored embayments you see throughout the coastline of Long Island are places where if a crab pot is placed in the bay there, or in the Nisqually River, Connecticut River, and so forth, they have to be equipped with these TEDs. We have, and the Nature Conservancy has been disseminating these TEDs along with the necessary, again, material to place them into the pots. Again, the hog rings or the zip ties. And we still have at CTOC many hundreds left. We've given away thousands to the DEC and to individuals to disseminate to the affected, regulated community, to Bayman, but we still have many more. So if you have an interest in getting some of these TEDs, please contact me or contact the CTOC Environmental Association, and we could work out getting them to you. So again, those areas, based on the regulation that was passed, now do mandate that the crab pots have TEDs. Next slide, Lauren, please. Another concern, that related concern, is what the impact of ghost fishing. These, of course, are pots that are lost typically through storm events. They're at the bottom, and unfortunately, they can continue to ghost fish and have catastrophic results. And you can see in the lower left of all the terrapins that died in one trap. And so there's been a kind of a concerted effort that Cornell Cooperative Extension has done a great job at securing federal funding to go into Long Island's abatements, Long Island Sound and other places, and retrieve, with the assistance of baymen, retrieve these pots so that they can be pulled up out of harm's way and be recycled. Next slide, please. And we have reached out to Assemblyman Engelbright, who is the New York State Assemblyman in North Central Suffolk County and is the chair of the Assembly Environmental Conservation Committee, asking that he please introduce legislation, which he has, and you can see the bill number is 4755 if you want to learn more about it. Just shows the beginning of it. And what we're trying to do is to codify a new section in the ENCON law that has to do with mitigation of marine and coastal debris. The hope is that through time, they provide a lot more funding and kind of raise the profile of debris, but get more funding to be able to pull out a lot more of these pots. We think that there are still tens, if not hundreds of thousands of these pots in Long Island coastal waters, each one of them potentially posing a problem to marine life. Next slide, please, Lauren. Another impact that affects terrapins is something that was seen vividly, unfortunately, back in 2015. Terrapins came out of hibernation. Of course, they're very hungry and started feeding on those snails that I showed before. And those snails have ingested endotoxins from algae. And of course, that bioaccumulated in the terrapins and killed them. And so there is a connection between overall kind of Long Island water quality and some of these toxic algae blooms and the welfare of terrapins. Next slide, please. Yet another concern on Long Island, where since we have 2.6 million of us that like to recreate along the beaches and unfortunately sometimes leave our garbage there, or we live in suburbia with a lot of garbage that's allows for really kind of subsidizing large populations of raccoons, possums, fox, means that we have to deal with large or high, I should say, rates of predation of terrapin nests and turtle nests in general. And it's an issue of concern. Again, Dr. Burke might speak more about this with regard to his work at Jamaica Bay. But in fact, it's not unusual that 18 to 19 out of 20 nests are predated by predators. And so there's a real effort to try to put in these exclusion devices that give the hatchling, the eggs, a chance to mature and the hatchlings a chance to succeed. Next slide, please. Yet another concern that terrapins face is hardening of our shoreline on Long Island. And this is an area I think we really can make progress, hopefully, in working with towns and villages and with state regulatory agencies. The DEC has come out several years ago with a living shoreline policy. I know the Peconic Estuary program is very interested in being involved in that, as well as a number of conservation organizations. And you can see why, because that bulkhead photo to the left in the riprap, absolutely inhospitable for a terrapin, a female terrapin, to try to come up onto shore to lay her eggs. I mean, that bulkhead might as well be the Great Wall of China to her. She's simply not going to be able to find her way up onto that sandy grass area where she may want to lay her eggs. And so again, as Long Island becomes more and more balkanized or more and more hardened from the shoreline projects, the less habitat there is for terrapins. So something we really need to be concerned about. And again, we all need to, I think, advocate a bit more aggressively for alternative models to help property owners adjacent to the coast protect their private property, while at the same time providing habitat for female terrapins to come ashore to lay their eggs. Next slide, please. And then there's roadkill. So female terrapins come ashore again, and if they do that in a place where they need to cross over a road to then lay their eggs, they move out into harm's way. This is an issue that has certainly occurs throughout their range. Certainly a major issue in New Jersey, lesser issue in Massachusetts. It has certainly happened on the Ocean Parkway on Long Island and a number of other roads that run adjacent to the coast. And again, just like with the TEDs, there's a fairly cheap, effective way to prevent that, and that is by installing the 6 or 8 inch hollow plastic drainage barrier anchored into the soil by upside down kind of steel rods shaped like a U. That's again upside down, and so the those materials held in place in case of tide rising, and the females do not or are unable to cross over that, and therefore stay out of harm's way and lay their eggs on the protective side of that barrier. Next slide, please. One case where this has happened is CTUC Environmental Association working with the town of Brookhaven and Eagle Scout and some brownies, some Girl Scouts and brownies at Mount Sinai Harbor, Cedar Beach. If you're familiar with that area, north central Brookhaven town, it's a town beach. And you can see, I think in a top photo, the water in the distance and water on the bottom slide to the right. Well, the terrapins would come ashore, come across that ground, out onto Shore Road, and then cross to the north into a fairly expansive sandy area, which is great terrapin nesting habitat. The problem, of course, is they get whacked by cars or the hatchlings. We know of cases where the hatchlings going back were crushed by cars as they tried to work their way back to sound. So we installed 550 feet of tubing that began at the corner of the fencing of the town of Brookhaven's shellfish hatchery facility and ran it all the way east, kind of snake-like fashion, to prevent terrapins from getting into harm's way. Next slide, please. And while we were doing that, Larry Davis, who is a well-known attorney in Brookhaven and involved in scouting in Brookhaven town, looked to the west and saw a female terrapin that was just coming out onto the road to go lay her eggs. And so you can see, it really made it tangible to us about the value of putting this tubing in, this barrier in, to try to prevent her from, and other terrapins from getting hit. Next slide, please. Not so much on Long Island, although others may speak to this, but they have in other places where they've had, unfortunately, terrapins that have been either badly injured or killed, able to excavate the eggs, if you will, from the animal and then incubate them and turn a very sad situation into something a little bit happier, with a happier ending, where the babies are able to hatch out. Maybe that's something that may be possible we could do on Long Island as well. Next slide, please. One of the strategies that, again, low-tech strategies to try to enhance terrapin populations, and it kind of relates to the roadkill issue I talked about, is putting in place turtle gardens. And again, this strategy has been used quite successfully in New Jersey and in Massachusetts on Cape Cod, where basically just sand is dumped in an area along the coast, close to the water where these terrapins are found. They've been placed typically in places where they prevent terrapins from coming out of the harm's way. So in New Jersey, they've been placed adjacent to parking lots where terrapins are now able to nest. Instead of crossing a parking lot to get to nesting habitat, they can lay their eggs in these turtle gardens, which really is just sand, fine grain, sand that's been dumped to a depth of about 18 inches to 2 feet, and again is placed near these coastal areas. And sometimes they use fencing to try to direct the female terrapins into these areas to nest. So again, this is a strategy that may have relevance on Long Island in certain places. Next slide, please. And then another impact that is kind of I guess I'd say the mother of all impacts, and that is long-term, what's the effect of global climate change? And we know, and again, Dr. Burke may speak more about this, but we know that terrapins really display or exhibit temperature-dependent sex determination. So, the hotter or the warmer the soils, the more females that you get. And we need to be concerned about that, or at least be aware of that as the climate continues to warm, and what that may mean long-term in terms of skewing the sex ratios of populations. It could be of profound concern down the road. Next, Lauren. So getting to the end here, thank you for your attention to this. To point out that there is this, again, Diamondback Terrapin Working Group. There's really the effort that we're doing on Long Island is the Diamondback Terrapin Working Group effort on Long Island, but there's a larger Diamondback Terrapin Working Group throughout the entire range of this organism. And there are many, many dozens of individuals, conservationists and researchers from a lot of different universities, from Texas all the way up to Massachusetts, that regularly participate in these working groups. There are different kind of regional breakouts of these working groups. And so we're in the Northeast region. So if you have an interest in getting more involved in this, you certainly can do that through this working group, or again, participate in the working group that we have formed specifically for Long Island. Next slide. And if you are interested in learning more about terrapins, if what I've said already and what others say has whetted your appetite, I would certainly encourage you to take a look at these two books that relate to terrapins. The one, Diamonds in the Marsh, again by Barbara Brennesil, is really just a great overview, easy reading overview about the life history, all various aspects of Diamondback terrapins. And the other book is a wonderful, a little more technical, but a wonderful reference guide to answer questions you might have about terrapins. Next, please. So there's the information again, that contact information that have for CTUC. Invite your correspondence to us. And again, if you have if interest in getting some of those terrapin excluded devices, please do reach out and we'll be happy to make them available to you. Okay, I think that closes the presentation. And what I'd like to do now is to turn it over to Dr. Russell Burke. It's my pleasure to be able to introduce Dr. Burke. Not only is he a professor at the Hofstra University, who has been researching and studying Diamondback terrapins for many decades, but in fact has headed up this Jamaica Bay Terrapin project for, I believe, the past 22 years, who will take us now through some of the specific aspects dealing with the monitoring training. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for that great introduction to terrapins. You did all the hard work for me, so I have much less that I need to do. Hey, I always appreciate someone doing the hard work. As John mentioned, we've been doing my team. I guess I can call them my team. I've been working with a group of people for close to 20 years now. We started working in Jamaica Bay in 1998, and we've been continuing this just about annually ever since. As a matter of fact, this is our first summer we are taking off and not doing this work because of the quarantines. But we figured we'd give the girls, the nesting females, a rest this year. But in any case, we've been working there for a long time. We've done quite a bit of work. Terrapins are great animals to study. There's so much we don't know about them that makes every day a discovery, every day something new and interesting, every day something we didn't expect. And every turtle is different, you know. So it's working with terrapins has been lots of fun, and I have lots more. We have lots more yet to do. We've kind of formalized this as the Jamaica Bay Terrapin Research Project. You see our little graphic over there. But I'm employed by Hofstra University. I'm a professor of biology at Hofstra. And many of the people who've been involved with the project over the years have been Hofstra students, Hofstra graduate students, Hofstra undergraduates, volunteers, some other faculty, even some administrators from time to time. So Hofstra's had a pretty big role in this over the years. We've really focused on nesting behavior and nesting ecology, and a lot of that work has been formalized into published papers, scientific papers, all of which are available to any of you who are interested in them. As John mentioned, there's a couple of books on terrapins, and we contributed a lot to the second of those two books, and a lot of our work is published in there as well. So if you're interested in details about the things we've done, one place to go is to look at the published literature. Next slide, please. So I'd like to start by reminding everybody that we do live in a world where there are some regulations and limits on what we can do. And I would, I'm going to talk a lot about how to count terrapins, how to census terrapins, how to tell where terrapins live and they don't live. But I do want to mention before we get started that we do operate under New York State DEC regulations, and that basically restricts us from capturing, from holding, from restraining any native reptiles, including Diamondback Terrapins. So while we're recommending and talking about all this really cool work all this really cool things we can do, I do want to remind you, please don't handle turtles. Please don't restrict their movements. In fact, it'd be best if we don't even scare them. We try to avoid doing all those things. To do those things, you have to get permits, and it's a little more complicated, and we're not getting into that here. So just to, keep that in mind. Next slide, please. Okay, so it was great that we started right off, in the very first question on the chat was about whether the terrapins that somebody sees in the water, whether the turtles that someone sees in the water are likely to be terrapins. And I just want to point out that here on Long Island, the only turtles you're going to see in brackish water or in real salt water, any water with a substantial amount of salt in it, these are almost certainly going to be terrapins. And some people will point out that that's not always 100% true, that we do occasionally see snapping turtles, but I think that most everybody can easily tell the difference between snapping turtles and terrapins pretty easily. So that being said, any turtles that you see in the brackish water around Long Island are very likely to be Diamondback terrapins. Next slide, please. Okay, so there's a lot of ways to observe terrapins, to count them, to tell if they're in your area, that sort of thing. And one of the ways, so I'm going to kind of go through some of those major ways right now. One of the really popular ways, and a way a lot of people see terrapins, even when they're not even looking for terrapins, is they see them when people are in their kayaks and their canoes and their marshes, and their boats, especially if they're somewhere close to a marsh like you see here. A lot of times people will see terrapins just a head sticking out of the water, or you might see them swimming like you do here in the lower left. That's a really common way for people to see them if you're out recreational kayaking or canoeing and you're somewhere near salt marshes here on Long Island. You might very well see terrapins swimming around, sometimes lots of terrapins. In the early spring, sometimes people see whole congregations of them, 20, 30, 40, 50, sometimes hundreds of them. Those are mating clusters. If you see those, and that's a great opportunity to take some video, because there are very few observations, detailed observations on mating groups. People see them, but we don't get a lot of detailed information about it. So if you ever see anything like that, by all means, take a picture or take video if you can. Next slide, please. Another way that people also see terrapins in the water is from land. And in fact, this time of year, just as we're heading into the nesting season, it's pretty common for people to see terrapins cruising the shoreline. And at Jamaica Bay, all my Jamaica Bay volunteers can certainly note that they've spent a lot of time standing on the shorelines looking for terrapins along the shoreline. And terrapins will swim back and forth. Female terrapins will swim back and forth and back and forth and back and forth for hours and hours in the general area where they will eventually come up to nest. And, I'm not sure exactly what they're looking for. You can see their head sticking out like this. They're definitely watching the shoreline. I assume they're looking for us and maybe other potential predators. But they do spend a lot of time looking at the shore. And so we often see them in the water while we're on land. And if you see them right now work along the shoreline, close to the shore, that's what they're doing. They're looking for a place where they're going to come ashore to nest. Next slide, please. And before we go on, the other way that people see terrapins in the water is when they're basking. John had a number of really great shots of basking terrapins. We generally don't think of terrapins as being big baskers like some other turtles do, but they really do bask a fair amount, especially in the early spring. But even a little later in the summer if we've had a series of cooler days and then there's a sunny day. If there's any sort of things floating out in the water, maybe a mass of algae or maybe some logs or something like that, you can see large congregations of terrapins basking too. So again, if you see turtles basking in salty water, those are almost certainly terrapins, and sometimes you'll see hundreds of them. Next slide, please. I just wanted to mention this before we left, the idea of terrapins in the water. A new way that some terrapin researchers are using now to count the number of terrapins in an area and to do censuses is using drones. And this is a bit of a shout out to any of you out there who have experience and maybe even own a drone, that I'm really interested in exploring this in a little bit more detail. So I'm looking for somebody with a little experience. But I mean, obviously there are state and local regulations, private property regulations we'd have to deal with. But drone censuses are one way that people are using right now to get information about terrapins. And just like when you're out in a boat, in a canoe or a kayak, you can see terrapins with their heads out of the water. You can see terrapins swimming, and drones look like a really interesting new route by which we can see where terrapins are. Next slide, please. All right, so let's move on to land. And as John said, a lot of people, their primary way that they've seen terrapins is when terrapins are on land nesting. And really, terrapins only come on land to nest. A little bit, sometimes you'll see numbers of them coming on land to bask, but really they like to bask out on platforms of some kind out in the water, and they don't use land, real soil, real beaches to bask that much. So when you see a terrapin like the one on the left here, that's a girl who just came out of the water, and she's scoping out the area to see if it's safe. If she gets startled, maybe by those birds there or something else, she'll run right back into the water. But if she decides the coast is clear in more ways than one, she'll make she'll trot up the beach there, and you can see that that one there on the right. That's a terrapin that is decided it's pretty safe, and she's making her way up. Her shell is still wet, so she just came out of the water. So she's making a trek up the beach where she can find a nice place to nest. Next slide, please. And terrapins can spend, I think we went one too far. There we go. Terrapins can sometimes terrapins will come out of the water and they'll come to the closest dry soil they can find, and they'll quickly nest and be back in the water in 20 minutes. They are among the fastest nesting turtles anywhere. Sea turtles, snapping turtles, painted turtles, they might on a quick day nest in an hour. But I've certainly seen snapping turtles take 3 hours, and certainly sea turtles can take as many as 3 hours, but often 1 or 2. Terrapins, like I said, can be in and out, can be out of the water, nest, and be back in the water in 20 minutes. And a lot of that is that those beautiful broad feet that they have that John showed in some of his slides that allows them to excavate the soil really, really fast. They plop those eggs in the ground and they can cover them up really fast, and then bang, they're back in the water. But even though they can be fast, they can also be hours and hours and hours on land. Sometimes they'll try to nest and not find anything quite to their liking. They'll go find a shady spot and they'll wait out the heat of the day and then try again in the evening. So they can be wandering around. They can nest close to water. They can nest far from water. They can, try to nest. That their travels may take them across roads, as John said. So this is really probably the most dangerous time in any female terrapin's life, is when they're out of the water. And so they're generally very, very cautious when they're on land. Next slide. But sometimes some individual terrapins are completely unafraid of people. And that slide you see there on the far right, that's a terrapin that came out of the water. I was sitting actually on a park bench, and she walked up to me. I swear she looked at me right in the eye, and then she turned around and plopped her nest in the ground right practically between my feet. So some of them don't seem to care at all. But most of them are much more skittish. So the take-home message there is, if you see a turtle on land, if you see a terrapin on land, and she's, if you don't know whether she's nested or not, you can assume she is not. it's best to keep a very, very good distance from them. They seem to have very good vision. They can see a long distance away. It's very easy to scare them off their nests. So give them lots and lots and lots of space. Don't crowd them. Don't go for shots like this. Don't try to take those great videos like John had. Give them lots and lots of space and give them the time to make their nests and cover up and walk away. Next slide. So some of the other signs that we use that there are terrapins in an area, if you just want to know if this is an area that's used by terrapins, you might see these holes, and this picture, you know, it's a very, very cylindrical hole. It's practically as round a hole as you could make if you were trying to do it with a tool. And those are holes that are made by turtles, either that started to dig a nest and maybe got scared away. So in days at Jamaica Bay when we have lots and lots of visitors and there's lots of turtles trying to nest, the next day you'll see hundreds of these holes all over the place because a terrapin gets started, it gets scared off its nest, it goes someplace else, it gets started, it gets scared off its nest, and blah, blah, blah. This goes on all day long. So we see a lot of those holes. Those holes are also sometimes called test holes because even when they're not startled, sometimes a terrapin will dig a hole like that, and then for some reason that is only clear to terrapins, you know, they decide this is not the right spot. Maybe there's a rock there. Maybe it's too hot. Maybe it's too dry. I don't know. And so they'll give up on one hole and they'll walk 3 feet and dig and start another hole. So there's actually 2 signs of terrapins in this picture here. There's the hole, like I've been talking about, but there's also that smooth path that kind of goes from the one side you know, of the screen to the one side of the picture to the other, and that's probably made by the shell, the lower shell of the turtle, the plastron, as the turtle's dragging it across the sand. So turtles, when they're moving across sand, will sometimes leave trails like that. So those test holes are a pretty good piece of evidence that terrapins are nesting in that area. Other turtles leave holes like that too. So again, you're going to want to use the sign, are these holes around a place that it's going to be mostly saltwater, brackish water? If it is, then this is probably a terrapin nest hole. Next slide. All right, so when those turtles are coming in and out of the water, especially if the sand is particularly wet, you can see on the left there, that's an area where the tide has gone out. And so there's wet sand exposed. And that's evidence that a terrapin came out of the water since the tide was up. And that's either a trail going in or out of the ocean. We call these crawl trails, as you would guess. And you can actually tell which direction the terrapin was going, whether it was coming or going, by looking closely at these. You can see claw marks. When the terrapin is moving across the sand, their claws dig into the sand a little bit. And if you see that, those pads like you see on the right, and then if you look closely, you can see claw marks on one side of those pads, either on the leading edge or the following edge. The claws are always in the front. In other words, they indicate the direction that the terrapin is moving. So in the picture on the right, that terrapin was moving from what is the bottom of the screen toward the top of the screen. And a lot of times, of course, you'll see these kind of trails, crawl trails in pairs. You'll see one where the turtle came up. And if she went back down in the same area, you'll see another one where they go down. And that once you've seen a couple of those, you'll have no trouble telling which direction a terrapin was going in any future crawl trails that you see. So this is a way of telling where terrapins are, even if you don't actually see the terrapin itself. Next slide, please. Okay, so another way to tell if you didn't actually see the terrapin itself is the unfortunate result of most nests. Our work at Jamaica Bay suggests that raccoons get somewhere in the neighborhood of 95 to 98% of all terrapin nests. We've been monitoring this every year for lots and lots and lots of years, and raccoons are really, really, really successful at finding turtle nests generally, and terrapin nests in particular. So what you find almost always the day after terrapin's nest, after the nest is laid, is just a pile of eggshells like this. Sometimes they're really complete, like you see in the center picture. Sometimes they're all curled up, and that usually means that the nest is a couple days old. In other words, the raccoons got it a couple days ago, and the shells have started to dry up. The one in the center, the raccoons got the night before, and a lot of times you can still see yolk, wet yolk on the inside of the shells. That gives you an idea how long ago the nest was laid and predated. But if the nests are not eaten in the first couple of nights, it appears that the smell of that nest will kind of disappear, and raccoons usually can't find them after 2 or 3 nights. So any nests that make it after the first couple nights have a much better chance of making it all the way to hatching. And one thing we found is that nests that are laid just before it rains really hard have a much better chance of avoiding being eaten by raccoons, because the raccoons just can't find them very well after a rainstorm, during or after a rainstorm. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so let's go on a little bit. Let's assume we're talking about a nest that avoided being eaten by raccoons. We actually put cages around a fair number of nests at Jamaica Bay to protect them from raccoons, and that is really, really successful. So of course, sometimes they get around, they avoid being eaten anyway. So that means that eventually those little hatchlings emerge. They can emerge in the fall, like John said, or again in the spring. Sometimes they overwinter in the nest. And sometimes we'll find a nest that's emerged, and you'll see a whole bunch of these hatchling trails coming out of the hole. And you can actually count them to get an idea of how many hatchlings emerge from that nest. But it's a really good indication of where nesting is occurring. And a lot of times you'll see them make a beeline right for the salt water. On the left-hand picture, there's a hatchling trail that goes all the way up, which you could follow all the way up to where the nest was, where those little flags were, all the way up at the top over the little dune there. And that hatchling made its way out of that nest, stumbled over that little bit of dune, and crawled all the way down to the ocean. Then on the far right there, that's a much more dramatic trail. That's softer sand, and so that it makes a bigger mark. And that's a hatchling trail coming out, moving along the sand as well. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So I want to wrap up with some of the newer techniques that people are using right now to count terrapins, and one that my lab has been doing a lot. It turns out that there's a particular parasite. It's a trematode, a fluke, that infects terrapins. It doesn't seem to hurt them. And our work so far suggests that terrapins don't get them in large numbers, only in small numbers, but it seems to be enough. Terrapins seem to be the only animals that the fluke can develop its adult life stage in. And the intermediate life stages develop in mud snails. And some of you will probably know that mud snails are super common in a lot of areas where we find terrapins. And terrapins eat the mud snails, and it looks like the terrapins get infected with the fluke after they've eaten the mud snails. And coincidentally, one of the stages of this fluke, while they're infecting the mud snails, is they crawl out of the snail itself, out of the skin of the snail, and then make these little cysts on the outside of the snail. And that's what the arrow there and the red arrow there is pointing to. These little cysts, little pearl-like cysts, of course, they're quite small, but they're certainly visible to the naked eye. And what some researchers found in the Southeast a number of years ago, and that we've been following up on, is that you can certainly detect whether terrapins are in an area by looking at mud snails and telling whether they've got these cysts. Because if they have these cysts, that means they have the trematode, and if they have the trematode, that must mean that terrapins are in the area, because that's where the trematode adult life stage occurs. So we've actually got a YouTube video on how to use these mud snails to count the number of terrapins, or estimate the number of terrapins in the area. I think it got cut off on the bottom of the slide here, but I'm sure we can make that the link for that YouTube video available. All right, so if there's anybody who's doing regular visits to shorelines on Long Island, maybe school groups or whatever, it'd be really cool to work with you to do long-term, regular, repeated measures of the number of these trematode cysts on the mud snails. Are completely harmless to humans, so you don't have to worry about that. And it's super easy to do, and it's a great thing for kids to do. I've taught a number of 6th grade classes how to do this, and the kids really enjoy doing it. And I'm really looking to accumulate some long-term data sets on how the number of these cysts varies with the terrapin populations. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'd like to wrap up with a shout out to some of the other places you can go for information. John already hit on these, so I won't spend much time on it. But the Diamondback Terrapin Working Group is the national organization that coordinates a lot of the work that's done across the country or throughout the range of Diamondback Terrapins. There's a northeastern chapter of that group, as John mentioned. There's also the Long Island chapter of that group, and you could be a member of any or all of those. The work that we do out at Jamaica Bay is pretty nicely summarized at our website, the jbtr.org website. So I'd encourage you guys to check that out. All our publications are up there pretty much. A lot of information about the work we do is there as well. And of course, you're welcome to email me at the email address that you see right there. And I'd be happy to take questions that we don't answer right here. So at this point, I'm going to turn our presentation over to Lauren Scheer. Lauren manages the education and outreach for Peconic Estuary Partnership, and she's going to discuss the PEP Terrapin Monitoring Program and why it's really important to identify terrapin nesting sites here on Long Island's East End. Lauren, it's all yours.
Thank you, Russell, for that introduction. So I just want to briefly go over who the Peconic Estuary Partnership is and then go over why terrapin monitoring is so important to us. So the Peconic Estuary Partnership is one of 28 national estuary programs around the entire country that's funded by the EPA through the Clean Water Act. In 1992, our program was formed with the mission to protect and restore the Peconic Estuary and its watershed. And for those of you that do not know, the Peconic Estuary is this body of water here between the North and the South Forks on the East End. And what we mean by watershed is when we're looking to protect and restore the estuary, we have to also pay attention to what we do on land. The watershed is the land area that drains water into the bays, this network of bays. And so if we're using pollution or fertilizers, pesticides, any nutrient inputs or pollution on the land will eventually make its way to the bays through groundwater or stormwater runoff. So when we're looking to protect and restore this ecosystem, we have to look at the bigger picture and focus also on the watershed. And this yellow line here depicts the Peconic Estuary watershed. So you'll know if you're on the inside of that line, that water will drain into the estuary, on the outside to the Atlantic Ocean and to the Long Island Sound. And when also thinking about our mission, it really is a collaborative effort to achieve what we want to. So we have to work with our partners, and we work with our partners on projects to improve water quality. We protect and restore habitat and wildlife. We also work with our partners on projects with shoreline resiliency in the face of climate change. And last but not least, we work to build and maintain partnerships around the community and engage with the public, whether it's through outreach programs or educational programs or citizens advisory committee meetings like the one you're attending today. And so it's a collaborative effort to really achieve this mission. And the reason why our program is standing is because the Peconic Estuary is recognized as an estuary of national significance, because it really provides natural resources and is a really big part of our community. So another aspect of how we engage with the public is also provide volunteer opportunities for the public to engage in citizen science programs. And one of those is the PEP, which is another way we refer to ourselves, the PEP or the PEP, Diamondback Terrapin Monitoring Pilot Program that we started in 2017. Surprisingly, on the East End, there really isn't any formal documentation on terrapins on the East End. So we don't really know how many there are. We don't really know which shorelines are favorited for nesting. So in 2017, we decided to start this information gathering, this beginning of understanding where terrapins are around the estuary. And so our main goal is just to survey areas of salt marsh to identify live terrapins or evidence of their activity to determine where their nesting habitat is located. And to start that, and to start with this big endeavor, you have to understand where what type of habitat they utilize for nesting. And these are great pictures taken by one of our interns. She was an intern in 2018 that we chose to start surveying at Northwest Harbor County Park in East Hampton, which is east of Sag Harbor. And these are pictures of that park. And it's a great example of a type of habitat that terrapins love to come up to nest. It's a little more pristine, lots of vegetation, some salt marshes and high grass marshes in smaller embayment areas, and of course the brackish water that our estuary is made up of. So we first thought, okay, what's their type of habitat? And of course you'll find this all throughout the estuary. So we decided to pick Northwest Harbor County Park to start. And with our interns in these couple years, we set out, and we didn't just look for those live terrapins, but also, as Dr. Burke and John Turner mentioned, we're also looking for evidence of their activities. So tracks, test nests, and predated nests, which will indicate to us that the site that we're surveying is favorited as a nesting site for female terrapins. Another way to see if a site is favorited for nesting is to find these overwintered hatchlings eggs, which were also spoken about earlier. This is just a great picture that was taken by one of our interns last year. On the right-hand side, this picture was taken in the early part of June. So, and you can see that the eggs are a little more firm and look a little older, and they're not ripped up like you would see more from a predator, but it's just one hole, and it just suggests that these were overwintered hatchlings. And then on the left side, this is a very older, a much older nest that was predated, because it looks like little white shriveled balloons in the ground. So we're looking for these things when we start surveying these habitats to indicate to us if this site is being nested. So why do we care about learning where terrapins are nesting around the estuary? And that's because, as we all know, and John Turner also mentioned, a big threat on Long Island is hardening our shorelines. And again, a terrapin trying to come up to nest here on this land gets stopped by this big wall here. And hardening shorelines is the structures of seawalls and bulkheads, preventing those species, not only terrapins, but also horseshoe crabs and other birds, from using habitat. So when you put up something like this, you're basically taking away habitat from their life cycle, which is not good for population for any species. So people tend to choose these in the face of sea level rise and erosion to combat storm surges and any impacts of climate change. The negatives, not just with habitat and reducing habitat, is also when a wave comes and hits the seawall, that energy just hits off that hard structure, is not absorbed, and will actually ricochet to the neighboring shoreline and further erosion nearby. So it's really not the best way to combat some climate change impacts. Luckily, we do encourage an alternative, and that's living shorelines. This picture in particular is a site in Greenport. It's a Widow's Hole Preserve in Greenport that was experiencing heavy amounts of erosion. And the PEP worked with Cornell Cooperative Extension and Peconic Land Trust to develop this living shoreline here, which basically we introduced natural resources to mimic a natural shoreline again. So there's salt marsh grasses. This is a Spartina grass here that was planted. We have beach grass planted further up, and then some sediment was introduced and some rocks. And the benefit of this is not only are we allowing access for terrapins and horseshoe crabs to still use habitat for nesting, and we're also keeping open access for people to access the water, but it does help with coastal resiliency. These Spartina grasses and beach grasses have tremendous networks of root systems in the land, which keeps together the sediment and helps to prevent erosion from occurring. So that vegetation is really key in helping to prevent erosion from occurring. Also, when you have storm surges and these high wave energetic waves coming through, it's absorbed, that energy is absorbed. So you're not going to start this domino effect of seawalls bouncing energy out to neighboring shorelines and furthering erosion elsewhere. So there really is a lot of benefits to incorporating living shorelines when we work to try to combat the impacts of climate change, not only for species and allowing habitat to exist, but also for us to keep our communities safe and resilient as well. So that's why it's so important for us to understand terrapin monitoring data and to collect data, not just terrapins, but all species. When we understand how many species are in a population or what habitat they're using, it helps to inform decision-making going forward. So the more data we have in the estuary, knowing what habitats and shorelines throughout the estuary that these terrapins are using for nesting, we can then say, oh, we are aware from data that this site is heavily used by terrapins, and in hopes to either put in a living shoreline and prevent hardened shorelines from being put up around the estuary. So again, we started in Northwest Harbor County Park, which is to the east of Sag Harbor, and the Jamaica Bay Terrapin Project, so Dr. Burke and Friends of Flax Pond really helped us understand how to start a program like this and what to look for terrapins. And so we had 2 interns for consecutive years go do a normal survey route at the park, which is the left-hand side picture there. And they would survey, again, not just for live turtles, but also evidence that they are there. And we followed a 3-day-a-week protocol following high tide and the moon phase. However, it is now known, or it looks to be, that the moon phases don't indicate or correlate with terrapins coming up to nest. It's not like horseshoe crabs when they come up at high tide. And so much so that our interns last year only found 1 live terrapin at Northwest Harbor County Park during the duration of the nesting season of the times that we were following. However, they did find 98 predated nests at that site. So again, it's so important to kind of look around and be a detective at these shorelines and look for evidence of their activity, because it can really indicate that it's a favorited site for nesting, regardless if you see terrapins there or not. So we did confirm after 2 consecutive years of full-time during the nesting season monitoring Northwest Harbor County Park that it is a favorited site for female terrapins to choose for nesting. So that's just a great thing to know when we want to inform land use planning, protect the habitat, and also try to encourage living shorelines around our bays. So we are a small program and we need help expanding. So we now know really from an intensive monitoring standpoint that Northwest Harbor County Park is in fact surveyed and known to be that nesting site, but we want to know more about the rest of the shorelines within the estuary. And so that's where you guys come in, where we want our partners to collaborate with us and maybe start their own survey programs. And of course, you would need to get permits from the county or the town, depending on where your site is. And I'm more than happy to help with that. But also our citizen scientists on the call, the more when you're out on the beach and you're walking around these shorelines and you start noticing, you cite evidence of terrapins or terrapins themselves and inputting it into this database that Ariel is going to talk about. You're just funneling all this great data to the online survey so that programs like the PEP can go to and see a development of data points around the shorelines to then get a better understanding of how terrapins are using the estuary shorelines going forward. So again, this is a small subset of a bigger goal. And we're in the very early stages of developing a wildlife monitoring network with our partners. So it's in the very, very early stage. So there's nothing out there yet, but we hope to create this network. Maybe it'll be a website or a web page on someone's website that is a one-stop shop for all partners and citizen scientists to go to find every Long Island established survey around Long Island for multiple species, for ease of access and for you just to become aware of the monitoring of wildlife, the various wildlife that we do here on Long Island, and to be easily involved with us. So we have the Long Island Terrapin watch that Ariel of CTUC is going to unveil after I conclude my presentation. But also there's the Horseshoe Crab Monitoring Survey that's hosted by Cornell Cooperative Extension and New York State DEC. And there's also Group for the Ascend is conducting an island-wide strategy to monitor osprey for the island. And it's just a really important thing to start learning about all of these surveys that are out there. So the more people know, the more we can funnel data and really get a good understanding of how our wildlife populations are doing on Long Island. So definitely keep an eye out for that as that develops, and hopefully it'll come out in the very near future. So with that, here's my contact information and the PEP's contact information. Our website is peconicEstuary.org. If you have any questions about anything that I covered, please reach out to peptalk@peconicEstuary.org. That is our main email, but it goes right to me, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And of course, we have social media, which is just a great way to stay connected with us and learn about any news with the Peconic Estuary and just how you can get involved. Also, I want to mention that this whole entire meeting is being recorded. So if you missed some part of it, or if someone wasn't able to join, you can definitely view this at a later date and access it through subscribing to emails and are looking at our websites and our social media accounts. But with that, I'm going to introduce Ariel Santos, who is the Policy Program Coordinator of CTUC. She is going to now show you how to record all of your sightings in their online survey. And now that you know what to look for, why it's important, she's going to bring it all together and show you how you can record your data. So thank you. And Ariel, I'll hand it off to you now.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Lauren, for that introduction. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here now.
I'm just going to do this.
All right, can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. So just to jump off of what Lauren had just mentioned, you now have all of the tools that you need to go and survey for Diamondback Terrapins. So we learned about how to ID terrapins, how to ID evidence of terrapin activity, and some of the threats that they face. So the big picture here is that Diamondback Terrapins need our help, right? And just by being here and learning about Diamondback Terrapins, you can share your knowledge with your friends and your family. You could share your knowledge with conservationists and scientists, which really lay the foundation for policy plans to build upon. And how you share that information is by using Survey 123 and submitting your sightings through the Survey 123 app. So what I'm going to go over today is what Survey 123 is, how to navigate to the survey, through the survey. We're going to break down some of the questions and then go over the browser versus the mobile application. And this is a little preview of kind of what the survey looks like here. And then also, if you see in the bottom left corner, it says Diamondback Terrapin Watch survey link. So this would link to the browser. And then this funny looking blob here is the QR code, which you would use for your mobile application. But we will get into that at further towards the end. So I'm just going to exit out of this presentation. And to get to the Survey 123 browser link, what you want to do is go to ctuc.org. Head on down to conservation, citizen science, and if you just scroll down here, you'll see Terrapin Watch, and you want to click more information. And you see that great flyer here. And then this is what it normally kind of looks like without the flyer. You have an adorable picture of a terrapin swimming. And then if you see, it says click here to access the Diamondback Terrapin Watch app from your browser. So you're gonna wanna click that. And so since we're focusing on the browser right now, we would hit open in browser. And there we are. So we have another great picture of a terrapin in the background. It says Diamondback Terrapin Watch. And for people who haven't been able to come to the workshop today, or for people in the future, we do have a breakdown of the survey questions above. So it starts off with self-explanatory questions: name, email, phone number, observation time, and observation location. And just something to keep in mind here, if you're doing this from your browser at home, you would click here and you see this sort of target here, that would start to spin and it'll locate where you are at this moment in time. But what we want to know is where you were earlier in the day or the day before when you saw that terrapin activity. So you just make sure you type in the place or drag it over to where you were, so we're keeping up to date with where those terrapins were. So just something to keep in mind. And then, have you previously observed terrapins at this location? Yes or no? And then you also have the option to add in images. And we definitely encourage you to add in images. We also want you to be respectful of terrapins and make sure you're giving them the space that they need. So just to keep that in mind as well. Images help with confirmation of ID, and also helps us get a better understanding of where this terrapin is or where these terrapins are and what they're doing. So then we get down here and it gets broken down into two kind of parts where it's evidence of terrapin activity, and then you'll see terrapin 1 through 5. But to start, we're going to talk about evidence of terrapin activity. And that's for if you've seen indications that terrapins were here, but you're not looking at a terrapin at this moment in time. So if you hit this drop down, you'll see that there is a descriptor for each location. So evidence of terrapin activity, sandy beach, public bathing. This is for sandy bathing, public beach areas. So places where you would normally go swimming, highly populated with people and people hanging out. So you would choose this option. How many predated nests did you see? How many eggs? How many sets of tracks did you see? Were they going towards the water or were they going away from the water? How many test holes did you see? And did you see any deceased terrapins? And so we broke these down into individual locations because we want to know where this evidence is exactly. And we can go further here: sandy beach, natural non-public bathing. So for sandy natural marsh areas or pristine areas, untouched, maybe somewhere you would take a hike around, not somewhere you would see people swimming. But if you ever get confused, you can always just drop down here and read the description. And also, don't get too caught up with not knowing where they are, because that geolocation tool will tell you exactly, or tell us exactly where you were when you saw this terrapin. All of these questions have the same exact sub-questions like I showed you, except for road. Some of those just don't apply to this, this area. So for road, we've had, did you see deceased terrapins? How many sets of tracks did you see? Were they going towards the road and towards the water? And what we mean by that is if you see a road and maybe there's some sandy banks on either side, you can tell by the patterns of the tracks whether they were coming off the road or going towards the road in whichever direction. And if you want to elaborate, please feel free. We have this box here where you can enter up to 1,000 characters and tell us what you saw. And then down here, we have Terrapin 1 through 5. So this is for individual terrapins that you are actively seeing right now live. So if we drop this down, these are broken down to either terrapin behavior and then where it's happening. So if you see one individual terrapin in front of you swimming, then you would choose that. or if you see one terrapin and they're walking away from the water, and then you would hit the location. And we want to know all of this data for each individual terrapin. That's why we've broken it down into individual numbers. And if you're lucky enough to see more than 5 terrapins, then we want to know. So you can just type that in here. We didn't want to overwhelm the survey with 1 million terrapin individual questions. So you can just type it in simply using this format, Terrapin 6, digging, sandy beach, public bathing, or like I said before, you can elaborate as well. And then you would simply just hit submit, and then you're done. And to give you a sneak peek of the data that is generated from the survey submissions, I'm gonna head to our survey 123 for ArcGIS, and you can see this beautiful map is generated from all of that survey data. And that's because Survey 123 is made from ArcGIS, and ArcGIS is a geographic information system. So it focuses on using maps and making maps to analyze spatial data. So you could see each dot represents a survey submission. And it's not just the survey submission, it actually shows us what questions you've answered. So have you previously observed terrapins at this location? Yes. Where were they? What were they doing? Swimming, the high marsh, you know? So it really breaks it down and gives us a lot of useful information. And another cool thing about this is that it analyzes the data as well. So if we break it down here, sorry about that. It actually shows us when people are seeing terrapins the most, or what month we're seeing terrapins the most. Have you previously observed terrapins at this location? And this is a lot of really useful data. And I just want to pause and take a minute to really focus on how important these questions are, because they're not just arbitrary questions, right? These are targeted questions to generate the sort of data that we need for our conservation work. So for example, if we see data that reflects a lot of people are seeing terrapins in this area, right? Day after day or week after week, we're seeing a lot of terrapins in this one specific area. And if we dive deeper and we see a lot of people are answering these questions, saying that they're witnessing a lot of mortality events and they're typing in what roads they're on, we can deduce or come to the conclusion that this might be a possible hazardous road crossing. And so we want to make sure that we're taking the necessary steps to reduce the threat exposure to the Diamondback Terrapins. And John had touched on that earlier with the terrapin tubing. So I just really wanted to emphasize that the data that you submit and all of the sightings that you submit lays the groundwork for some really important conservation work that can be done and that is being done on Long Island. And it's easy too, right? So we just visited a link, clicked on it, submitted the survey data, and that's pretty much it. And you could also, if you're more comfortable using your phone, you can use your mobile device as well. So we're actually going to get into that now. So I'm going to head out of here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for 1 second. And then I'm going to go over exactly how to use that QR code. So you notice that crazy looking blob in the corner. And what you do is, all you need to do is download the Survey 123 Field app from whatever phone provider app store that you have. And now that you have it on your phone, you would just use your camera like you would normally do, taking a picture, and then hover it over that QR code. So once you do that, you will see, sorry, this is a little awkward, but you'll see a little prompt come up here. And you just follow the prompts. I think I lost it. We'll do it one more time. Okay. Yes. So now you have that similar prompt that we found in our browser, right? But we don't want to use the browser right now. We want to learn how to use the mobile application. So you're going to want to click that, follow the prompts again. I just want to go ahead and open that. And now my app opens automatically. And there's our survey. So some of the downfalls here is we lose a little bit of that formatting, but all of the questions are exactly the same, and which is the most important part, right? All of the drop-down menus are exactly the same. And there's two really cool benefits about using the mobile application. And one of them is being that if you are witnessing a terrapin or evidence of terrapin activity at the beach, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna go on my app, enter in the information, but maybe you don't have great service in the area, or you feel more comfortable hooking up to Wi-Fi, you can actually X out of this, save it in your drafts, and submit it later when you have better service or when you're connected to Wi-Fi. So all you do is hit the X in the top left corner, and then this prompt comes up. You can either trash it, continue and submit, or that bottom one right there, save survey in drafts. And then you're all set. And you'll see the Diamondback Terrapin watch with that orange circle. It's just telling you that, hey, you have a draft here, don't forget to submit me. And the second benefit to having the app is that if you're an active citizen scientist and you're participating in numerous surveys, you have all of your surveys in one spot here. So if you participate in the river herring survey, you can save it here. Diamondback Terrapin watch, otter watch, whatever it is. And as time goes by, you don't have to keep navigating through the link and go to the website. You just open your app like any other app and it's right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen one more time. And at this point, we can go ahead and wrap up the presentation and take some questions. So I'm gonna go ahead and thank you guys so much for coming here and learning all about this and wanting to be a part of this really awesome Diamondback Terrapin Watch citizen science program.
Great, thanks, Ariel. So yeah, this is the question and answer portion of the meeting. There are some questions coming in to the chat box. I think Emily at CTUC just responded to the latest one. So if this is not a paid, you don't have to pay to access this survey. Someone asked, do you have to pay for ArcGIS in order to do the survey? No, the survey is through Survey 123, and it's a free accessible link on CTUC's website. And also, like Ariel was mentioning, if you download the Survey 123 app, you can access the survey that way too.
I actually have some questions here that I saved earlier, Lauren.
Great, that would be great. And there are some over here, so I'll get the latest ones and you can start off with the previous ones.
Yeah, sure. So Russell and John, if you guys want to join back in, I think I have some good questions for you guys to take on.
Okay.
John, this one I think would be good for you from Guy Jacob. Is there a Senate sponsor for Bill 4755?
Yes, there is a Senate sponsor, and actually I responded to the guy through the chat. It's being sponsored by Senator Brooks, and I think it's Senate Bill 7689. I'm not exactly sure, but the good news, it is a bill that's been introduced in both houses of the New York State Legislature.
That's great. Thank you.
Sure.
And then Russell, I'm not sure if you answered this question earlier about how far terrapins will crawl across marsh grass to get to a sandy area from Barbara Butterworth.
Wow, that's a tough one to say what the maximum is, but like I said, sometimes just a short distance, but other times they'll spend hours walking through marsh grass and on beaches and such to find the spot they want. So they'll certainly walk through a considerable distance of even difficult terrain to get to good nesting sites. I've seen them go through brush that I would not want to walk through myself and come out on the other side an hour later.
Awesome, thank you. And I think some of these other ones that I had noted down, you guys have gotten to. So Lauren, you wanna?
Sure, there were some specific questions to the survey itself. One person, I just have to find who it was, but they were asking, so Beth was asking, can you type in a latitude and longitude value in the map, like manually?
So I believe you can, but it normally generates whether or not you pin your location on your map. So if I can go back here, oh, having some technical difficulties. Sorry, it's not letting me exit this screen. But I believe you can, and if not, you can drag it to wherever the appropriate latitude and longitude you're looking for is.
Great. And then another question specific to the survey, can you skip non-available items or parts of the questions that you don't have answers to, or do you have to put in a value of 0?
So certain parts of the survey are mandatory to answer. Those would be observation time, date, where you are, your name and email and stuff. But otherwise, the ones like the numerical questions aren't mandatory, so you would be able to skip those.
Okay, great. Let's see, there's some newer ones popping in. Did we go over this one from Peggy? Is the survey already set up for otters, etc.?
Yes, so I did put the finishing touches on the Otter Watch survey, but all of the otter resources will probably be coming out officially in around the fall time.
Great. Are there specific sites around Long Island that you are interested in obtaining data? So on the PEP standpoint, anywhere around the Peconic Estuary that we're in the very early stages. So anytime you're walking the beaches of the Peconic bays, definitely keep an eye out. And then that will help build up that database for us. I don't know if CTUC or Dr. Burke, you have anything in particular you want to add?
Or sorry, I muted there. I don't have particular sites. I would encourage people that are interested to choose sites that are convenient for them.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean, it's even interesting to do surveys at places which look good but don't seem to have terrapins. It would be so very cool to document terrapins moving into an area that is suitable habitat, but for some reason they didn't occupy before. So even getting data from sites where there aren't terrapins now, but it looks like good habitat, and then somewhere down the road documenting them moving in, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Another new question that came in, is it possible to access data once it's submitted? For example, if a private landowner wants to analyze their data, can they access the subset they submitted? Would you be willing to give this type of access on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, absolutely. So all of this data is publicly shared. So you can go back and click any of those spots if we were to share this on the website right now. And it'll generate a pop-up that says who surveyed, where they surveyed, why they surveyed, all of the information. So it would all be public information that you could use.
Right, and that's similar to the river herring survey that CTUC also has on their website that is in collaboration with Peconic Estuary Partnership and Long Island Sound Study. It's a great database over many years of you can see how the data you submitted, how it plays into the bigger picture as well around Long Island as a whole. Do you know whether fiddler crabs or other crabs would prey on hatchlings? I guess.
Yeah. I don't know of any instances. I mean, fiddler crabs, although the males have that impressive claw, I don't know of any instances where they would feed on hatchlings. I know down south, I think ghost crabs do, but I don't think there's any crabs on Long Island that feed on hatchlings. I mean, they've got bigger things to be concerned about, like, you know, black-crowned and yellow-crowned night herons will feed on them, and other species of birds. I mean, bald eagles are known to take. In fact, I remember seeing somebody posted a photo of a bald eagle on Long Island, I think, carrying away a terrapin. But I don't think crabs. I mean, I'll stand corrected if Russ knows something different, but I don't believe crabs really pose much of a risk to hatchlings. Yeah,
John, I think you're right. At least I don't know of anything that I don't think anybody's ever shown that. But it's maybe possible. But we know, for example, that rats take hatchlings. Certainly raccoons do. All sorts of birds do. Many different kinds of birds do. Hatchlings are small and defenseless and slow, so just about everything can eat them. Praying mantis do. Don Reapy has a picture of a praying mantis eating a terrapin hatchling.
It's a great question. Thank you, John and Russell, for answering that. So another one. Are the nests typically close to the base of a dune and beach grass line, or can they be anywhere from the rack line to the base of the dune? So from our experience, they can climb through heavily vegetated marsh grass and get up to the top of the dunes. But Russell, do you want to maybe elaborate more?
Absolutely, as you're saying, well, I've had them nest below the high tide line, which means the nest get flooded and drown. And nest quite a long ways from the top, past the dunes, well into vegetated habitat. So they, at the airport, we've seen them nest in piles of asphalt that were piled up at the edge of a runway, and there's a little patch of soil collected in there, and they'll climb up a foot high pile of asphalt and find a little bit of soil and nest in that. So they are remarkably non-particular. I'm not sure what word you want to use, not fussy about nest sites sometimes.
Yeah, and our interns last year saw tracks that were going up these steep, highly vegetated parts of the marsh, and it's incredible what they really can climb through and where they pick to nest. So really anywhere.
They generally like elevation. So if there's a hill or something like that, they'll often aim for that.
Yeah, that's actually where we found a lot of evidence, was the highest elevation of the site in the last couple of years. It's a very good point. Let's see, how far from shore would they go?
Yeah, I think maybe we just answered that.
Yeah, we did. And then, of course, as we know, there's the unfortunate cases of roadkill. They can travel pretty far from water. I don't know if we missed any. That seems to have been the most recent question. Some people were asking again if the presentation or this meeting would be available afterwards. Just want to reiterate, yes. If you follow or subscribe to any of our email servers, and if you follow our websites and social media accounts, you will get access to this presentation, to the video recording of this meeting. And we're also going to be sharing outreach materials that CTUC have developed so that we can help spread the news. So people who miss this workshop, it's some little fun facts on some outreach materials that just can help us get the expansion going for this terrapin monitoring program and survey. I got some more questions coming in. Someone wanted to clarify. So how they meant to say, when they said how far from shore would they go, she meant to say how far in the water.
So the genetic work that's been done so far suggests that terrapins stay pretty close to where they hatched for their entire lives. So, for example, we expect that the terrapins that hatch in Jamaica Bay probably never leave Jamaica Bay. It's a fairly well-contained waterway. So they're not like sea turtles in that they, move thousands of miles and then come back every year to nest. They stay, both males and females, stay pretty close to where they hatched out, probably no more than a couple of miles from where they originally hatch out. We don't have long-term tracking data for a lot of turtles, so it's kind of hard to say, but that's what it looks like at this point. They're much more homebodies than sea turtles are.
Right, that's a good point. And they also, in water, they rely on eelgrass beds, which is completely submerged seagrass, to find some food and forage there. So anywhere where there's eelgrass is also an important habitat for them in the water.
Yeah.
How far do they migrate through their habitat once they hatch? I guess that's referring to hatchlings.
I think we answered that.
Yeah, we did.
I think so.
Where do the adults overwinter?
It's funny that's coming from Mary, because Mary and I have written project proposals to investigate just that. So she's actually asking, do you know the answer now since our project didn't get funded? Yeah, that's a really tough question to answer, and it's one that became particularly important during Hurricane Sandy, because, you know, Sandy hit just as our turtles were going down for the winter, and we detected an increase in mortality the next year, which, you know, coincided with Sandy. And I have to assume that with their terrapins overwintering someplace, they were someplace where they were sensitive to something that happened as a result of Sandy. But the data on what terrapins do in the wintertime is really, really sketchy. It's very anecdotal, you know, very small numbers of terrapins in a few places. Not much, even less is known here in the Northeast than in the South. And it's particularly important here in the Northeast because, you know, we get freezes and they don't in some places. But they probably overwinter in the mud, in the salt marsh mud, probably in the deeper channels that go through the mud or something like that. Yeah, we just have never had the technology to really investigate that seriously.
Okay. Is there population fluctuation or trend data somewhere to see? So I believe that would be more of a localized answer, where I'm sure Dr. Burke, with your 20+ years, you would have a good understanding of the population at Jamaica Bay, and then you have Friends of Flax Ponds in Setauket area that it has a really good handle of the population there. I don't know of any. That's where I guess the survey comes in Long Island wide for us to start understanding where the population, where they favor habitats, how many are there out there, and so on. So I don't know if there's anything else that I might be missing.
Well, we have, as you mentioned, Lauren, we've got a couple decades of mark recapture data from both of the Jamaica Bay populations, the one at Ruler's Bar and the one at the airport. And we're actually in the final steps of putting together some papers on that. So that'll be coming out hopefully in the next couple of years. But there's actually region-wide a surprising number of projects, terrapin projects that have been underway for a long time. And I'm also involved with a whole group of people throughout the region, from Massachusetts down into southern Jersey. I think we've got 12 different population studies, you know, our two in Jamaica Bay, and then the Meadowlands, and like I said, a couple others in other places in Jersey. There's several here on Long Island, not just ours, and not just the Friends of Flax Pond, but there's also one at the Marine Science Nature Center in Oceanside. There's also data from some places in Rhode Island and in Massachusetts. So there's actually quite a number of population studies, and some of which go back into the late 70s. So some of the mark recapture work was started in the late 70s. So region-wide, the northeastern U.S. has a number of these population studies, and I've been working with a colleague to get them all standardized and published in one place.
That's great.
Different trends in different places. Some places numbers are going up. Most places they're going down.
Lauren, I want to just make mention that the Okeanos Ocean Foundation, that organization that once existed, there was a researcher there that tried to conduct an island-wide census about the populations. And I can't remember what the number was. I don't know if anybody else participating knows, but I want to say it was, I think, a couple thousand, in the low thousands, estimated terrapins on all Long Island. So one of the things would be nice to get at is of course, some sense about what is the population in Long Island coastal waters, and of course, what the trend is. And then more fine-grained, what does that mean for each embayment, and what can we do both island-wide as well as with each of those areas to promote the an increase in the population of the animals. So
yeah, that's a great mention too. Thank you, John. Looks like that was the last question. What time is it? So it's 3:49, so we technically have another 10 minutes. Someone just mentioned Steve Moriel at Cornell did the study with Okeanos.
Yeah, Steve was the person, that did it.
Thank you.
I don't know if Amanda, I think, who sent the question, if she's got the information about the numbers. I'd be curious to know what they came up with for an estimate as to kind of overall back then. Again, things have changed probably since the 80s.
Yeah, it's a really interesting paper. It was, unfortunately, of course, he had to do cover all of Long Island in 2 years. And so unfortunately, there's not a lot of detail, but it's a start.
Yeah.
Great. I'm actually going to share the survey link in the chat box so people have access to it. Let's see. Okay. So I'm sending this to everyone now. So this is the link from CTUC's website to access the survey. So now you all should have that. But again, we're going to share all the materials after this meeting. Does the nesting season extend into July, and how late? So yes.
Yeah, we certainly have detected nesting all through July, even into early August. And we've had nesting start as early as, I think our earliest was 23rd May or something like that one year. So it can start in May and end in August, but generally it doesn't start till a few days into June right about now and ends around the 3rd week of July. But it's, you get a few stragglers at each end. There's always one who wants to do things different than everybody else. We know the type.
Right. And then you would see hatchlings, of course, further.
Sure.
Yeah, after in August.
You can see hatchlings anytime.
Yeah, that's true.
But usually in the late summer, early fall, like you say, or in the spring.
It takes about 2 months for the hatchlings to emerge.
Something like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Totally depends on the temperature of the nest.
Right. Is that what you do in Jamaica Bay? Do you take temperature of the soil where you find nests or test holes?
Yeah, we've done that a lot. We have a lot of data on nest temperatures.
Yeah.
And one result of all that suggests that Jamaica Bay mostly produces female hatchlings. The vast majority of the hatchlings that come out of Jamaica Bay are females.
Oh, wow. So out of the 20 years, have you noticed that trend increasing for more females as time has gone on, or has it been pretty much the same?
Yeah, we've only collected enough data to really make estimates like that a few years, because collecting a lot of temperature data enough to really be analyzable in this way is not easy to do. It's
right.
And we haven't detected any trends like that. But it could easily be that our technique is just too crude to show it. Mm-hmm. And there may be more going on there than we can see.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. Let's checking out the chat box. I don't see any more questions. So I think we still have a decent amount of people. Is there anything that amongst the 4 of us that we wanted to mention that we didn't get to mention?
I just want to say, as I've said a few times, let's make a difference with regard to terrapin populations on the island. Certainly their fate is in our hands. We've laid out all the myriad threats that they face. I didn't even mention boat strikes, by the way, which is another whole issue. So they really do have to kind of navigate through a gauntlet of potential adverse activities just to survive. And so I would hope that everybody's participating in this will be involved in some way or another to try to enhance terrapin populations on Long Island.
Absolutely. And we provide, REL has provided a really good way, an easy way to do this. What's easier than using your cell phone?
Right. Exactly. Julia in the chat box asked any field trips. So that's definitely a call for outreach programs and citizen science calls. We definitely want to take a day and have volunteers out there and show them what to look for, and definitely keep an eye out for those events amongst all of our groups that we may advertise.
Lauren, I saw another correspondence here about somebody not getting all the information they wanted regarding the 123 app.
Okay.
Ariel, you see that from
So
James?
I'm going to try to exit out of here. So just to go over it one more time quickly, and you guys can still see my screen okay, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So basically, you can find the link on CTUC's website. So you would just type in CTUC ctuck.org. And now that you're on the CTUC website, you will just head on up to Conservation, and then you'll have a drop-down menu here, Citizen Science, click that. And now you're on our Citizen Science page. And you just scroll down here, you see some other opportunities that you could participate in, and then you see the Terrapin Watch. So you just go ahead and click more information here, scroll down again, and then here is where you find this hyperlink to the browser version of Survey 123. So it says click here to access the Diamondback Terrapin Watch app from your browser. So you would just go ahead and click that, or if you have that free mobile app of Survey 123 downloaded on your phone, you can scan the QR code here. But we can just go ahead and click that, open in browser, and then it'll populate that survey, and you can submit it straight from here. I hope that helps clarify that.
Yeah, so when you're out, if you're out on the beach and you see evidence, you want to document it right away, you would go on your phone and go to CTUC's website and follow those steps. Or if you have that app on your phone, it's already populated. Let's say you find it through Survey 123. From that link, it'll populate in for future uses while you're using Survey 123. And we hope in the future to also have this survey link housed on that Wildlife Monitoring Network one-stop shop web page or website that we hope to develop, where you'll be able to find this survey, the horseshoe crab survey, and all the other surveys that are established and hosted by numerous environmental groups around Long Island. So just an ease of access to find everything in one place as well. So, but it will always be on CTUC's website. This is their creation, and this is where you would find it on ctuc.org.
Right, and just to add, if you do use the browser link from CTUC's website and you're on your phone, you can still use the browser version on your phone using, whether it's Chrome or Safari, you could still use that, or you can use your app. Depending on how much storage you have, you might not want to download the app, which is totally fine. You can still access that browser version from your cell phone.
That's a great point. Checking the chat box, I think that was it. We just have some people providing some resources. Mary, the status and population, ecology of the Diamondback Terrapin, the Okinos Ocean Research Foundation, and then a better link to Steve's paper. There's another link there for another resource. So it's 3:58. If there are no more questions, I don't want to cut people off in case they're typing something. Oh, we got to thank you. I'm glad. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for being interested in helping out. And then we have Jane. Are you aware of a Yukon data collection around the sound similar to yours? I was not. I don't know if you guys were aware of the Yukon data collection.
No, not me.
I'm not, but
There used to be a researcher studying terrapins in Connecticut, but they stopped years ago, and I don't think anybody, I'm not aware of anybody in Connecticut working on terrapins anyway.
Mm-hmm. But thank you for making us aware of that, Jane. Thank you for your compliments, Susan, Julia, thank you. Sarah, Nancy, are you referring to the iNaturalist BioBlitz? I guess that was the Yukon data collection. They do more than terrapins or may not do them at all. I know they do water quality. Okay.
Fair enough.
There's all these great programs out there. Okay.
By the way, anybody who wants to can save the chat. It's really easy to do if you want to save it to look at any of these links or whatever we've been doing. If you click on the three little buttons to the right of at the bottom of the chat box, you click on those buttons where it says more. One of the things you can do is save, and it saves it into your folder, and you can send it to yourself or open it later.
Thank you, Russ. That's great. I didn't know that you could do that. All right, it's 4 o'clock. So thank you everyone for providing comments and questions and being really interactive throughout this presentation. Again, you'll get all these materials through our emails, and just make sure you subscribe if you want to get it directly into your inbox from the Peconic Estuary Partnership or CTUC. And if you just want to check out our website, it'll eventually be posted there. And then of course, shared on our social media channels. We thank everyone for joining us today. And thank you, Ariel, Russell, and John for great presentations.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
You did the hardest job of all.
Oh, thank you.
Great job.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. And as John was saying earlier, it's a really great community thing to do and monitor for these species of wildlife and hope that we can help conserve and protect their habitat. So thank you, everyone. And with that, everyone have a great weekend. And we will hopefully see you soon at more outreach programs and citizen advisory committee meetings. Okay, bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, guys.